Alright, so we're going to be watching some scary animations because why not? Start with this one, I guess, or go down or something. I don't know. Let me check if I'm live really quickly. Uh-huh. Or go down or something. I don't know. I'll mute that. There we go. I don't uh, I don't know. Home, I guess. I don't know. Scary animations. Just search that again. Alright, we're gonna watch these three real Home Alone horror stories animated because animations, blah blah blah. Yeah. Welcome to the video and stuff. Or stream or whatever you're watching right now. You could be watching the edited version or the stream, which is happening right now. Discord. Give me a second. Okay. So, let's get into it.
When I was a kid in the 90s, I used to seriously hate going to school. There would be at least one day a month where I would wake up and have it decided in my head that I was staying home. I'd do whatever it took, pretend to puke, glue myself to the toilet, cry, you name it, I'd do it. I'd do it because it worked. My parents were working class, all-day laborers, and couldn't afford to stay home or argue with me. By the time I was in 4th grade, 10 years old, they'd cave and just let me stay home alone, the days that I pretended to be sick. I remember one morning waking up and not having to fake it. My stomach was in knots, my throat was on fire, and I couldn't even keep my own spit down. Seemingly anything had me throwing up. Because of my habit of staying home, I was hell-bent on having some fun, even at the cost of a little discomfort. I lounged in the recliner, what I considered a gaming chair, and played some of my favorite video games. The bathroom upstairs was around the corner from my room, at the end of the hall. For no particular reason, this bathroom creeped me out from day one.
Yeah.
I personally believe in ghosts and stuff like that as a kid. Again, for no real reason. I cooked up the idea that in my head, sometimes I saw things down there at the end of the hallway. The reality was there was a window way up high on the wall. It would cast odd shadows down at the base of the wall. I knew this, but liked to scare myself and my friends whenever they came over. Being home alone and needing to take a leak, I decided I would go downstairs to both use the bathroom and investigate our fridge. As I got up, I sidestepped into the hallway, and of course saw something weird out of the side of my eye. It looked like a big looming man in the corner of the hall.
That is a man. Don't even get rid of the fact that it's in your head. That is a man.
Now this spooked me, and I booked it downstairs and waited. Nothing. I figured if it was a real person, I'd hear them walking. As you can imagine, I was alone. I go into the bathroom and do my business, and then head to the kitchen. The fridge was right beside our front door, so as I'm looking inside, I'm parallel to the front doorknob. I'm looking around and not finding anything that I can stomach, when I hear something weird, a jingling. I look over and exactly what I thought was happening. The front doorknob was wiggling back and forth. It's locked, thank God. My parents were security prone. The deadbolt.
Grab a kitchen knife call the police something. Like, I'm trying to spit out commentary, but I
was
don't
even locked.
know what else
But
to
still,
say.
I knew immediately that this was not anyone that lived here. We lived in a pretty good neighborhood, average sized suburb. But in my mind at the time, anything was possible. Beside the door is a
Mediocre.
big window, and something moves back and forth beyond the curtain. I watch in total horror as some skinny old guy leans over with his hands cupped to the glass and peers inside.
Pedophile.
His eyes go left, then right, and they fall on me. And this big,
Yep.
awful smile stretches across his face. He taps on the glass like I'm some animal at the zoo. I remember slamming the fridge closed so hard that I could hear everything shift around inside. For some reason, probably adrenaline, I thought that my mom was gonna kill me when she got home and opened up the fridge and found the booby trap that I just made. I remember being more worried about that than the guy looking in the window. Again, I was like 10 or 11 when this happened, so I fancied myself a strapping young man in my head. I was also used to staying home alone and had dealt with a lot of different people coming to our door. Electricity and water department workers, gas gauge checkers, Mormons, Jehovah's Witness, and any other number of people prone to knocking. I ran through a mental checklist as I looked this creep up and down. He definitely wasn't here to see my mom or dad. Definitely wasn't on the clock. He wasn't even knocking. I mean, if there's a red flag, this guy was firmly holding it in his hand. "Hey, why don't you come open up the door?"
Frick
said,
that.
pointing down to the handle. "I was just here yesterday." My head starts swimming. The hell is this guy talking about in here yesterday? Does he work for my dad? Does he know my older sister? I took a step forward because I was so caught off guard. He almost got me for a second. I was about to open up the door out of denial, hoping there was some sort of rational explanation.
Frick
I caught
that.
myself after that first step, shook my head. No way, dude. He then shook his head too, and then kicked the house siding hard as hell, hard enough to make me jump. The whole kitchen was behind.
Oh god, I'm sorry. Pause the stream. Shut up. Blah 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 blah. I don't care about your.
behind me, and the stairs
Yeah.
off to the right of the room where the living room began. On the far side of the kitchen, there was a little hallway that led back to my parents' room, plus the laundry room, a bathroom, and then the side entrance for the garage. When I remembered the garage,
Some
this
homemade
entire plan
strawberry
springs into action in my
jam.
head. To this day, I've never had a more clean, pragmatic line of thinking as I did that day. It kind of bums me out, to tell you the truth. And I've been told
Oh, it
it's
doesn't.
because that's the only time my life has ever been on the line. Anyway, we kept a lot of things in the garage, like our camping and outdoor gear. This also included my cheap Walmart special paintball gun. It was one of those clear gray pump action pistols. Took the CO2 cylinder in the bottom of the handle and slung a paintball hard enough to break a window. I know that from experience. I grabbed it.
Wow.
Immediately changed the cylinder out of habit because I knew what
You broke someone's window. I don't know what else to say.
the hell was in there
Goodbye.
had to be dead.
Keep
I slammed
playing.
a couple of handfuls of paintballs into the hopper. Good to go. I looked down though and saw something else that we kept in the garage. The splitting log, which had a hatchet sticking out of the top. I yanked it out and tucked it into my pajama pants. Crept back down the hallway. Now I can hear the guy messing with the door, so when I peek around the corner, he's no longer looking in the window. I bolt as fast as my sick little body would allow me, through the kitchen and then up the stairs.
As fast as I can. Slow as a snail.
The landing led right into my bedroom.
Hey, snail!
Myself. I figured I'd shoot the guy if he came upstairs, and if that didn't deter him, I'd have to use the hatchet once he got inside. In my head, it was foolproof, but something told me to stop. Something better occurred to me then.
Call the
Instead of my
police?
I went around the corner and towards the creepy bathroom at the end of the hall. It felt crazy, but something told me this was the best plan. I stopped and went to the bathroom. I slid the window open as quietly as I could. I knew if I could fit through the opening. I knew the roof was easy to walk over from there. I'd snuck onto the roof a number of times this way, and I know if I crept around, I'd be able to see the front door. I pulled myself through, tiptoed along the roof, careful not to stand too tall or step too loudly. Honestly, the guy was an adult. He might be able to just climb right up the roof without a problem. I wanted to get the drop on this guy though. After a few steps, I came around and lo and behold, there he is, still working on the door. He's got a screwdriver, a credit card, a coat hanger, literally a kit the guys would have from Home Alone. It was cartoonish. The guy even had crazy hair and goofy clothes, like pants that were way too high. It was obvious this person was a stranger. In the moment, I wish I'd grabbed the telephone just to dial 911, and I realized that I had no idea what this guy was actually capable of. But he was desperate enough to get inside our house. It sounds crazy, but I swear it's the only thing that I could think of. I began shouting video game quotes at this, the toughest ones that I could remember from whatever games were out at the time. Obviously,
That is so dumb. Why would you just shout video game quotes? Like, go downstairs or wherever that you have a phone. Call the police or something. Or just get the frick out of there and get to a neighbor's house so that they can help you. There's so many things that you could do in this situation that aren't that.
a string of profanities, and when I first started shouting, the guy almost jumped out of his skin. Seeing him scared in just that brief moment opened up a whole new confidence in me. I started pelting him with paintballs. The chest, the hands, the face, the throat. I shot him everywhere, black and blue, literally. He was only 15 or 20 feet away, and I shot that thing every day at that point in my life. I could hit a dog turd at 50 paces. A full-grown man was an easy target. I'll never forget how he started screaming, like top of the lungs screaming. I think he thought I was shooting him for real, as those old single-pump paintball guns were loud as hell when they fired. Add that instant sting that he felt. He probably thought it was real for a second or two. Either way, he danced out of my sight. He composed himself, then started hollering threats of all kinds. He was saying them all in this deep, creepy voice that he didn't have before, when he was asking me to open up the house. I ran around to the other side of the roof, and by God, there he was, stalking around the opposite corner. I didn't even need to tell you that I lit this guy up again, but this time he just booked it and jumped over the fence. He walked back to the little creek that separated some houses, rinsed the paint off of him, then wandered up the road. And you can believe I watched him for every step of that. Once he disappeared, I ran fast as hell inside, never dropping my weapons, and got a hold of our phone. I wanted to call the cops, but just opted to call my mom instead.
What is wrong with you? Call both. Call the police first, and then call your mom or dad or whatever. It's just so that you're safe first, because your mom and dad are gone. The police are gonna get there much faster than your mom and dad. Like,
she worked much closer and would be able to get home in at least a little bit quicker. I told her everything, and she called my dad. They both showed up not much later. I broke down at this point, as the reality set in that I was actually in danger. The story actually gets kind of crazier. The guy that was looking in the window, someone had been in our house the day before, and my parents were keyed into it because some stuff had been moved around the house. They noticed an open window in their bedroom. Some of the books were moved around, clothes moved too, and someone had a cigarette out in their bathroom sink. They knew it wasn't us kids. Obviously, neither of us smoked. They made sure to lock the doors, but other than that, they really didn't know what to make of it. It turns out that guy who peeked in our window had been casing houses up and down our neighborhood. 2 or 3 had already been robbed, and a 4th summer home, but over a dozen had been probed and valued, including ours. He would come up to a house, go through as much of their belongings as possible before being discovered, then come back the next day right when everyone was leaving and get what he wanted. He didn't account for me staying home that day, my parents locking everything up after having that first weird experience. I'm so glad that I live in the time that I do, as you can imagine. I have cameras everywhere now, security to the max, and a big .357 revolver instead of that paintball gun.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
thanks to that childhood weirdo. I was around 16 years old at the time. It happened in the suburbs of New Jersey. It was about 8 p.m.
Wait a damn minute.
I was around 16 years old at the time.
Who is that? Is that his mom or something? I don't know. That doesn't look like he had. Never mind.
It happened in the suburbs of New Jersey. It was about 8 p.m. and completely dark outside. I was alone in the apartment where my aunt and I lived on the 4th floor of a very old apartment building in a very tiny complex. When you looked out the living room window, they looked down on the parking lot. The walls were paper thin, and the windows seemed to be single pane because you could hear everything going on.
That's his mom or something.
You could especially hear when a car arrived. It was second nature to look out the window at the sound of a car because, well, we're so nosy, I guess. That night, I heard the sound of a very loud pickup truck.
There's no way that
My
that's him.
uncles lived just down the road, and both drove pickup trucks and visited regularly. So I got up to check the window to see if it was one of them. This time it was not. It was a beat-up old Chevy truck with rust all over the place. Inside were 2 teenagers. The
1980s
second I came
Chevy.
to the window, the driver pointed straight at me,
Forgot
as
what it
though
was.
he absolutely knew who he was looking for and where I was. Now that freaked me the hell out, and I took a step back. I was about to walk into the other room and just try to shake it off when there was a pounding on the apartment door. All I could think was, the hell? I walked over to the door as quietly as I could.
Oh, there's a story too, but the same guy
I
talking.
leaned to the door without touching it. I
Oh.
held my breath as I looked through the peephole. I couldn't believe what I was now seeing. Out there in the stairwell were 2 very agitated-looking teenage boys. They were twitchy and jumpy, clearly on something.
Probably on drugs,
And
yeah.
one of them was holding a Home Depot bucket. And here's where my brain must have snapped into some sort of dissociative panic mode that would come back to haunt me later. In the bucket, there was duct tape, a rope, a hammer, some wood, and a long, serrated-looking knife, like the kind you use to cut spray foam to make it smooth. I pulled back from the door immediately. My brain was going 1,000 miles an hour. For just the briefest of moments, I thought, there's no way this is real. There's no
Call
way
the
they're just carrying a
police.
bucket of these murder tools right out in the open for me to see. It's so stupid. This has to be some sort of joke. Yeah, it has to be. I went to the peephole again to try to get a good look at them. I didn't recognize either one. Let me tell you how significant this was for me. I was pretty well liked at my high school. I moved between social groups very easily. I got along with everybody. I got to know pretty much everybody, and everybody got to know me. Part of this, I believe, is because I came into high school with my self-confidence guns blazing. I had spent horrific years in middle school being bullied relentlessly for being a lesbian. When I got to high school, I swore I would never let anyone use that weapon against me ever again. So on the first day of 9th grade, when it was time to get up and introduce ourselves in the class, I said, "Hi, my name is insert name. I like girls." People were really impressed. They actually loved it. They loved how open I was, and they loved that they could ask me questions about anything. Looking back, part of me wonders if all my confidence blinded me to the fact that perhaps I made myself a target. When I realized I didn't know either of these guys, and that they were not friends playing some kind of weird prank, my heart sank even further. Now you would think the most common sense thing to do at this point would be to call the police. You know,
Yeah.
it would be. But of course that's not what I did.
Yeah.
You see, I knew that if I called the police and my aunt found out about this, I would never have a moment to myself ever again.
No one cares if your aunt. Would you rather die or your aunt find out about it? That's the real question. I would rather not die. Fix my webcam. You wonder why my background is a little shifty, I guess. It's just paper. Because, you know, it doesn't have to be anything else. It's just
My
taped to
aunt
the
was already
chair.
hyper paranoid about child abductions. Pretty much anything she could ever watch on a Lifetime movie turned into concrete fear for her every day. I can't tell you what it took to convince her that I, a 16-year-old, would be okay in an apartment by myself for a few hours in the evening. So of course, my selfish, stupid teenage brain put that in priority over, staying alive.
Yeah.
Through the peephole, I could see that one of them had stopped bouncing and twitching, long enough to slowly lean his head towards the door, trying to listen for movement inside. I knew this was my chance. The second his ear touched the door, I pulled my hand back and slammed the door right where his ear was, and let out the deepest, most guttural shriek that I've ever made in my entire life. His friend tripped over him. They grabbed each other and started fumbling down the stairs. I got all the way to the floor and peeked through the very bottom blinds of the front window to see the truck peeling right out of there, tires smoking. Not one neighbor came out to see if I was okay, and I know they heard me. That was just as terrifying as the experience that I just had. I could hear on a regular basis when my neighbor to the left would sneeze too loudly, but none of them heard me screaming. Yeah, okay. I never saw those guys or that truck ever again, and despite how long I've made this story, the entire incident couldn't have taken more than 8 minutes from start to finish. I completely believe that seeing that bucket full of murder weapons was the moment my brain went into self-preservation mode. And because there was no aftermath, because there was no repercussions, and because I didn't talk to this about anyone, it started to feel even less real as time moved on. I questioned it over and over. Did this really happen to me? But I know it happened. It was just so damn weird and unexpected that my brain didn't have the neat little compartment to put it in. The pestering question is why.
A neat little compartment. Ba, 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 ba.
Was it actually random? Or was it actually targeted? And I even know that I was home alone. I'm retired now, but I worked as an inspector for both private companies and the county throughout my career.
Alright,
I
third
was asked by a
story.
private home builder to inspect a house halfway through its construction, and then they would submit my inspection to the county. I get inside and start doing my job, wandering around with a clipboard and a flashlight. It's pretty routine, up until I get to the back end of the house. I can hear something. There seems to be trash scattered in some of the rooms, and I hear a buzzing, like a radio or something. Then it hits me. There's probably a contractor here, someone finishing up the drywall or something to that effect. I peek into the master bedroom, and inside I spot a woman. She's dirty, somewhat around 30 or 35, and she's definitely not working on the property. "Excuse me, are you supposed to be in here?" I asked, hoping she was the homebuyer's wife or something. "Of course I am. What are you doing in my house?" she replied. I'm the home inspector. I scheduled with her husband and the contractor to do a full walkthrough. I guess I didn't realize anyone would be here." She grumbled and gave me some kind of response, then vanished into the bathroom area. Not all of the drywall was up, so I could still see her feet and arms as she shuffled around, continuing to make these weird noises. At this point, I was kind of creeped out and was ready to get the hell out of there. This was well before pocket cell phone, so I was on my own out there, at least until I could get back to my car. I hadn't encountered much in the way of weird at this point in my career, and this lady was about to culture me with a great deal, if you catch my drift.
If you catch my drift, giggity gamer, bruz. Oh, she has a knife now. I didn't even
Back in the bathroom with
notice.
the biggest kitchen knife that I've ever seen, and planted it right through a piece of hanging drywall. I took a step back out of pure instinct and did my best to ask her what the hell she was doing. What came out
Bro, what the hell are you doing? What the hell are you doing?
sounded something like, "What, why, what is it you're doing?" She didn't miss a beat though. "I don't have a husband, so I think you need to leave." I look around the floor. I see the trash for what it really is. Pack rat stuff, food wrappers, tissues, toilet paper.
Homeless
This lady's
person.
crazy and homeless, and she's just moved in. By the look of it, she's been crashing here for at least a couple of days. Probably hasn't had a care in the world. Now, the only thing to piss her off is me, and I'm stuck here with her. Alright, simple logic prevails. Time to go. I tuck my clipboard up on a shelf, check my pockets for my car keys, and begin back up towards the exit. "Don't leave your pictures here. They'll want those back at the station," she says, pointing at my clipboard. I shake my head and raise my hands to show them that they're empty, and I keep moving backward. She doesn't like this. She starts breathing weird, like super hard and deep. I take my own
Didn't she just say to take the clipboard? Whatever.
deep breath and go back to grab that clipboard. Anything to mediate the mood. This triggers her
he is
even
going
worse
back.
somehow. This lady starts screaming like a banshee. She takes a run at me, and it scares me so bad that I almost fall backwards. I only caught myself by the threshold of the door, which I can firmly say held my weight. A+ for construction on my inspection so far. Thankfully, she stopped short. Didn't really charge fully at me, but her screaming has created another sound, something out of place. I turn to find a man, a little older than the girl, shamble out from a closet, or some partially finished nook. He's shirtless, tattooed, and gaunt. Definitely a junkie. "You woke me up," he said. "You shouldn't be here. Why'd you wake me up?" I tried to answer, but what the hell was I gonna say to this guy? I could tell by his look, logic, it wasn't gonna speak to him. Then the woman came back down the hall from where they were standing and had me kinda cornered. "He says my husband sent him," she said. "Threw me right under the bus." Then the guy starts to lose it, flexing, bugging out, hyperventilating, that sort of thing. He starts pressing me about how her husband found them, where he was, and if he was close. Total druggy paranoia. I assured them that I didn't know the guy. I had no business with them. I was just there to simply look over the house. I made a mistake and got the wrong address, and I would be on my way out without any more issues. They'd never
Okay,
see me
smart.
again. Apparently, at least from what I gleaned, they were on the run from this lady's husband. He was a drug dealer, and they owed him a boatload of cash. They were on their way out of the city on foot, and they spotted the partial build on its own. It became their little cracked-in haven for at least 48 hours. It didn't matter though. They wouldn't let it go. They were beyond convinced that I was a resp for her husband. I'd found them, and now someone needed to make a move. It was by far the scariest standoff that I could imagine, as I wasn't prepared to take on not one, but two agitated crackheads. As they closed in, it occurred to me that the only ace up my sleeve was the crap that they were telling themselves. I had to go with a lie, and the second that I did, they completely changed gears. "Your husband isn't gonna like any of this. You know he's outside, right?" Both of their jaws immediately hit the floor, and then they sprinted over to the window to do what junkies do. Peep through the blinds, work that window like a true crazy person, see what's out there. I proceeded to back through the house until I made some distance, then ran as quick as I could to get back to my car. I was horrified when I looked up to find them chasing me across the front yard. They were
Damn.
much paler and thinner than I first pegged them for inside the house. Out in the sun, they were even creepier. Because of their look, I dropped my keys in the dirt before I could even unlock my car. All I could do was snatch them
Stupid.
up and start running again, aiming for the next cluster of new builds. I saw a couple of trucks parked near them earlier, so I was praying to myself a construction crew would be nearby. Anyone normal to help me even out the teams. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to run very far, and I stayed well ahead of the junkie house dwellers, but they still didn't give up the chase. I spilled into the nearest house, and right there, a crew of 5 guys met me with hammers and saws, asking me what the hell I was up to. It was exactly what I wanted to see. I explained that I was a home inspector, was working next door. Some druggies inside caught me off guard and chased me over here. They gave me the green light, and they went outside to confront the duo on the lawn. It went exactly how you would expect it to. The crack twins started telling some crazy-ass story, and the construction guys snapped them both up and put them on the ground, called the nearest police station. They sat on top of them until the cops arrived, at which point I had to clarify my story a little bit more. The whole thing was absolutely wild. and they got hauled off with their belongings. I said a big thanks to the work team that saved me. Even dropped a few gift cards off for them later on that week. There was minimal damage to the house, except for the bathroom that they were hiding out in. It had the craziest graffiti that you could imagine. I swear it looked like it was painted in blood, carved out with a knife, and straight burned into the wood and drywall.
Maybe it
Just
was.
something out of a movie. All insane devil worship stuff, I think. I've always felt like I got away pretty lucky that day, as they both seemed pretty strung out as I did my walkthrough. Had I caught them when they were more coherent, who knows what could have happened.
Yeah.
When I was a kid in the 90s,
Alright, so we're gonna how about this one? One more story.
The PA system crackled to life on a Thursday during second period in my junior year of high school. The familiar tones of the recorded voice filled my classroom.
Lockdown, locks, lights, out of sight. Lockdown, locks, lights, out of sight.
The words kept repeating as Mrs. Danbury paused at the board and looked up at the speaker in the corner of the room. Okay, you all know what to do, she said, rushing toward the classroom door to shut and lock it. Nervous chatter went up among the students as we rose from our desks and moved into position against the wall. Is this real? My friend Colin asked as we sat on the floor with our backs to the wall. Must be, I said. They'd tell us if it was just a drill. The sound of helicopter rotors was faintly audible over the recorded voice of the lockdown alert, and the noise grew louder as we sat there in the dark classroom. After a few moments, it sounded like the helicopter was right over the school. A full minute passed before the helicopter moved again, the noise making it sound like it was going in circles above the campus. A loud bang, like a door flying open, sounded out.
He must be like some crazy guy got into the school or whatever and had a gun or something, cause yeah.
Someone yelled in the hall, a sound that was quickly replaced by automatic gunfire.
Yeah.
I slammed my hands over my ears, along with many other students.
Maybe
Some of the girls,
it's like
and a few of the boys covered their mouths as they cried out softly. More
maybe it's like a group of bad people
gunfire
or something.
erupted
I don't know.
out in the hallway. It sounded as if there were 4 or 5 guns firing. An inhuman screeching
oh,
sound
yeah.
pierced the
If you like the story, go check out Dr. No Sleep.
air, making my eyes go wide. I looked over at Mrs. Danbury, whose face was drained of all color. She was the nearest to the door, the nearest to whatever the hell was going on in the hallway. The gunfire stopped, and I heard a man shout and then scream. His wail of pain stopped abruptly with a loud, crashing bang. I didn't have to see it to know that he'd been thrown into the lockers lining the hallway.
Okay.
The metallic bang was enough to tell me that. More gunfire sounded outside, and then more screaming. Then there was silence. For several seconds, we all listened hard for anything outside. The recorded voice was still going, and the helicopter was still faintly audible. The sound of running footsteps suddenly came to us from the hall. The footsteps stopped abruptly, and a terrible scream erupted just before the door to our classroom smashed in. A SWAT officer flew backward into the room and slammed into Mrs. Danbury's desk, which
Damn.
slid several feet from the impact. Cries of fear came from the students
What's even in there that could do that? Because a person could not do that.
around me
I
as
don't
they
know.
saw the soldier was missing an arm. He'd hit
Oh,
the desk
oh.
with his mid
Hey, good thing they automatically put blurring there. But why would there need to be blurring there? It's just ketchup.
back and had come to rest at an angle that told us his spine was broken. Once the
No, that he's
there was only
fine.
silence
Just walk it off. He's just fine.
in the hall. It went on for long enough
Yeah.
that I was starting to think the danger had passed. Mrs. Danbury apparently thought the same thing, because she crawled toward the doorway where the smashed door was hanging open.
She's about to
I don't know what
die.
she was trying to do,
She's about to die! Woo!
but as soon as I saw her move toward the doorway, I wanted to tell her to stop. Still, I made no sound for fear of attracting whatever was outside, if there was anything there at all. She peeked her head around the door jamb to peer into the hall. Her left hand came up to her mouth as if trying to keep herself from getting sick. She stood up and turned around to face us. "Okay, we need to move to another classroom," she said. "The hall looks..." A long, blistered, red and black arm with a claw-like hand darted down from the ceiling outside.
Okay, these aren't true. I thought these were true. Maybe that's why that there's a big arm that kind of looks like a bear or something. We'll keep watching.
Inside the doorway and
I
grabbed
guess.
Mrs. Danbury by the neck, stopping her words. It yanked her out of the classroom before any of us knew what was happening. We heard a scream and a thunk from outside. Then Mrs. Danbury appeared in the doorway again, only she didn't have any arms.
She's fine, YouTube. Don't cancel me. She's fine. It's just fake. She never even had any arms. She just had prosthetics on and they fell off. If that makes anything better. Okay, YouTube.
Blood spewed from her mouth.
No, ketchup spewed from her massive wound.
As she stepped into the room, looking back over her shoulder with a dazed look on her face. What she saw there snapped her out of it, and she started running toward the wall of windows opposite the doorway. Fountains of blood poured out of her as she ran.
Fountains of ketchup poured out of her.
Ran past her desk, screaming. A monstrous, scarred figure that looked like a badly burned mix between a bear and a baboon darted through the doorway after our teacher. It leapt, smashing into Mrs. Danbury just as she reached the window. The two of them tumbled out, falling to the ground just a few feet below. My teacher screamed once more outside before her vocalization stopped with a terrible ripping sound. All of us students stayed frozen against the wall, staring at the broken window, waiting for the thing to come back in. We should have run, but we didn't. It was all too much for us. Eventually, the gruesome sounds from outside stopped, but none of us were willing to risk standing up and moving toward the window to see what was happening. Not long after those noises stopped, we heard a flurry of gunshots from far off, likely off the high school campus. Hearing those faraway shots snapped me out of shock. I stood up and moved slowly to the doorway.
Frick that. I'm freaking like not going towards the door. I'd rather punch through the wall. That doesn't make sense.
I looked out to see the hallway
Goodbye.
littered with dismembered bodies. There was blood all over the
There was ketchup all over the hallway.
A man with a smashed head.
He did not. He is fine. He's intact.
Lay below a huge and bloody dent in
Ketchup.
several of the lockers across the hall. A few other guys and I led the rest of
All that red, it's just like ketchup from like burgers, like being thrown on the walls from a food fight. Yeah.
the class out. We headed toward the evacuation spot and were about halfway there when we ran into more police coming into the school. They took us to safety. We were told it was an escaped animal from the zoo. That's even what they said on the news that night. They said it was a bear, but I know what I saw. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't any animal.
It was a beast, not a bear. Roar!
ever seen. And the fact that there's a military research base not far from our school is just too much of a coincidence. But those of us who were in that classroom that day are smart enough to keep our mouths shut. But we know the truth. We'll always know the truth. Story 2. Dead all day.
Alright, we'll watch one more story, and then I do have to go and play with my IRL friend, Yaz.
Before the lockdown even started, I knew something weird was going on. And I wasn't the only one. It was my senior year, and I had a pretty easy schedule. It was spring, and I could see the end of high school on the horizon.
How long have I been streaming for? Or my recording's been paused this entire time? You gotta be kidding me! Okay, well, I've been live for 41 minutes and recording for 8 minutes. That's not enough content. Anyways, well, it's a good thing that the starting of this story just happened. So, get into this. People watching the recording instead of the
But
stream.
that day, a Tuesday, my concerns turned from the mundane to the insane.
Mundane to the insane, insane to the mundane. I'll stop
I
now.
shrugged off the strange feelings I had. I thought the teachers were just having an off day. Or maybe it was me who was having the off day. I told myself to forget about it until lunch came around, and I went off campus to get a burger with my buddy Tom. "What's up with the teachers today?" Tom asked, as we sat in the fast food drive-thru, waiting to pay and get our food. I turned, surprised at Tom, who was usually about as observant as an octogenarian with failing eyesight. "You noticed that too?" I asked. "Yeah, man. They're acting really strange. Mr. B
Yeah, man. You're acting really strange. Yeah, man.
Amos was just staring at me during first period. His eyes were all wide and blank.
Pedophile. Or mind control. Either one.
It was creepy as hell. Then during second period, Miss Delia forgot how to spell the word algebra. She just stood there at the board, her hand up, with the A and the L written. I swear.
Algebriy. Algebriy.
She stood there for a full minute before Courtney Miller asked her if she was all right. It was weird. Maybe they all got together and smoked a blunt this morning or something. I laughed at that, thinking about hotboxing one of their minivans. But the laughter didn't last long. Tom was right. Something funny was going on. "Yeah, Mr. Liu walked super slowly up and down the aisles while we were taking a test today," I said. "He never does that. He always sits at his desk and reads or something while we take tests. And how slow he was walking? You'd have to try really hard to walk that slowly. Plus, I caught a whiff of him as he walked by one time. He stank. He was wearing cologne. I could smell something.
He's so stinky. No.
Beneath it. "You know what?" Tom said. "That made me remember something. You know how Miss Delia is always so
Stanky
prim and proper? She's a neat freak, right?" I nodded. I had Delia in one of my afternoon classes. "Well," Tom continued, "she looked kind of sloppy in class today. Her hair was frizzy, her makeup a little..." "I don't know, sloppy or something. It didn't connect until you said that about Mr. Lou stinking. Our conversation stopped.
Mr. Lou is stinky.
Then I
Go
drove
take
to
a
nearby
bath,
bar.
mister. Take a bath, Mr. Stinky. Forgot his name.
Where we sat on the hood of my Camry and ate, enjoying the spring day. We got back to school just in time for class and went our separate ways. About 20 minutes into class, the lockdown started. I was in Mrs. Santiago's class when the alarm went off. Mrs. Santiago smiled, as if she'd been expecting it, which made me think it was just a drill. Although every other time they'd done a drill, they'd told us beforehand. "All right, class," Mrs. Santiago said. "We're doing something a little different today. Half of you are going to stay here in the classroom like a normal lockdown drill. The other half will follow me to another location. It's something new. We're trying to see how it works." I looked around, furrowing my brow. I didn't see the logic in it. Why would half of us leave the classroom to go somewhere else if there was a threat out there? A few other kids in the class seemed to share my concern, but most of them didn't care. They were simply willing to do what the teacher said. I waited for more information from Mrs. Santiago, but she didn't do anything for several minutes. After turning the lights off and locking the door, she just stood at the front of the classroom, hands clasped behind her back, looking at us with a small smile on her lips. Finally, just when I was about to ask her what was going on, she split the class in half down the middle, telling those of us on the left side to come with her, and those on the right to stay in the classroom. I stood and lined up with the other kids on the left, while those on the right got against the wall. We followed Mrs. Santiago out of the classroom, taking a right. I was 3 kids behind her, peering around them to watch her, thinking about the strange ways teachers had been acting. She was in her 50s, with hair that had mostly gone from black to gray. She wore a floral print dress with frilly short sleeves. As we walked down the hall, I saw a drop of blood crawl down the back of her arm from under the sleeve. It stopped.
Miss Santiago, you're bleeding. Miss Santiago, why are you bleeding?
Just above her elbow. A bad feeling seated itself in my stomach as we reached the doors to the gym.
That's only 2 kids. See? Bam. 1, 2. You're the 3rd. Dummy.
Aside and
I
opened
accidentally
one
muted
to
it.
usher us inside. It was dark inside the gym because all the lights were off. As soon as I walked through the door, I stepped aside while the other kids walked past me into the darkness. I could hear some of them murmuring. They knew something was wrong. One of the students pulled out a phone and turned on the flashlight. The illumination revealed other people in the gym, teachers, just standing there in the dark on either side of the doors, making a wide corridor in which the students now stood. There must have been a dozen of them, and as the flashlight came on, they moved in on the students. Screams bounced around the gym as the teachers had...
Damn! Why are they killing them? Damn! Oh, damn! Nothing is happening here. Nothing's happening.
attacked the students
That's a toy. That's a toy.
with knives and cleavers from the school kitchen.
No.
Unleashed a deep fear inside me. Since I'd stepped aside to the wall when I'd entered the gym, I was still in the dark. I stumbled back toward the door, watching in abject horror as
No.
knives plunged into my fellow students.
No. No. They weren't real. They're toys. They are toys. Okay? They're toys, nothing else about it. Just props. None of this is real.
Clammy, cold hands grabbed my shoulders. I panicked, throwing an elbow behind me and connecting with what felt like a nose and mouth. The hands came off of me as I turned around, seeing Mrs. Santiago standing there staring at me, her mouth split open and her nose bleeding. I shoved
Not blood, it's ketchup! It's ketchup!
past her in the doorway, trying to get away from the gym. but she grabbed my left arm with her right hand. At 18, I was much bigger and stronger than her. I shoved her as hard as I could. Something ripped, and she fell back against the gym door. But her hand
arm?
still gripped my left arm above the elbow.
Yeah.
I scrambled, pulling at her severed arm, ripping it off of me and throwing it at her feet. I ran, looking back over my shoulder as Mrs. Santiago...
Lizard people! She's a lizard.
Seemingly unaware that she'd just
Lizard.
had her arm removed, staring at me as I sprinted down the hallway. I ran for the nearest exit through the empty hallways, past dark classrooms.
I have no idea
The
what's
lockdown alarm
happening.
was still blaring.
Either they all like kids, or they're being mind controlled or something. Or
But I
something.
barely
I don't
noticed it.
freaking know.
The sound of my heart beating seemed louder than any alarm could ever be. I slowed as I passed Tom's classroom.
Heart's
Clarity came into my
beating.
thoughts. I wanted to run out, but thinking of Tom and my other friends made me think of all the students that would be in danger if I just ran away. I approached Tom's classroom slowly, glancing through the slender window into the dark room. I thought I had seen Tom's fifth period teacher, Mr. Pelham, in the gym. So when I didn't see anyone in the classroom, I banged on the door. "Tom!" I whispered loudly at the door between bangs. "Tom, it's me, Nate," I said. Tom appeared out of the darkness. "Nate?" he said through the closed door. "What are you doing?"
Ah! Ah! Stab! 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 Toys, YouTube! It's toys! They're not real! Stab!
"Where's your teacher?" I said. "I don't know. He left like 5 minutes ago. Told us to stay put." "Open the door. We've got to go," I said. "The teachers, they're killing people." "What?" Tom said, smiling. "Don't mess with me, man. This is serious." I stepped back from the door and glanced both ways down the hall. I didn't see anyone. "I am serious," I said. "Everyone needs to leave. Come on." Tom reached for the door handle, but a voice from inside the classroom stopped him. I couldn't hear exactly what they said, but Tom's response gave me a clue. "I know we're not supposed to open the door," Tom said, "but this is Nate. He's no school shooter." Tom opened the door and let me inside. I closed it behind me and looked into the darkness at the students sitting against the wall. "We need to go," I told them. "Now.
There's a
Something is
teacher.
seriously wrong." "We're supposed to stay here," one girl whose name I didn't know said. "That's what the drills are all about, remember?" "I'm telling you," I said. "The drills didn't have this in mind. It's the teachers. I watched them kill some of my classmates. There's something wrong with them. Haven't you noticed anything strange today?" I could see in their eyes that many of the students had noticed, but none of them moved. "All right, fine," I said. "I'll go get help. Tom, you gonna stay here or come with me?" "I'm with you, man," Tom said.
I'm with you, man!
"Okay," I said to him. Then I turned to the other students. "Someone call 911 if you haven't already." "We have," someone said. "They have police on the way. Lock the door behind us," Tom said to the nearest student as we turned to the door. It was tempting to hunker down and wait for the cops to show up, but seeing what I'd seen, there was no way I could do it. The teachers had keys to the classrooms after all. We'd be sitting ducks. I checked the hall before stepping out. Tom followed, shutting the door softly behind us. We booked it to the nearest exit and pushed on the metal bars to open the doors. They came open a few inches and stopped, the telltale rattle of chains coming from the outside.
Oh,
"The
damn.
doors," I said in a harsh whisper. "What the hell is going on here?" Tom said. I looked around. "Let's try the faculty area," I said, noticing that we were near the admin offices. "Maybe they left one of those unlocked." Tom nodded. We moved cautiously through the halls toward admin, listening hard and keeping our eyes peeled. We ducked through the doors denoting the faculty area and saw a flickering orange light coming from the teacher's lounge. The door was closed, but, like most of the doors in the school, it had a thin rectangular window off-center through which the flickering light shone. I crept up to the door with Tom behind me. Taking a deep breath, I looked through the window. I saw a figure in the middle of the room staring right at me. I pulled my head back down. "What?" Tom said. There's someone in there, I said, then stopped.
His head is like all the way around.
The figure in the room took a moment to solidify in my mind. I stuck my head up again and looked through the window. The vice principal, a man named Jim Sheridan, was floating in the middle of the room, his legs and arms outstretched to make an X with his body. He was naked, and there was a short wooden spear jammed through his chest. The orange light was coming out.
It was not going through his chest. It was just a prop. It stops here, and then it goes through the other side, like one of those knife heads, where it's like a piece of metal going like that, and it's like a knife here, and you put it on your head, and it looks real. It's not real. It's just like that.
And wide open mouth, flickering as if from an inner fire. There were also red glowing words and symbols written on the floors and walls of the lounge.
That looks like Japanese or Chinese. Pretty sure that's Chinese. Or Japanese.
Pulsating in time with the brighter light coming out of Sheridan's face.
Some of them. It
He floated
kind of
just
looks
above
like
a
it, but
glowing
it could
circle,
literally just be
the
symbols.
edges of which were surrounded by strange symbols and words. I couldn't read any of the words because they were in another language, but the symbols looked like they'd been taken right out of a horror movie. "How is this happening?" Tom said, and I realized he was standing behind me, looking over my head through the window. He sounded on the verge of tears. "This isn't supposed to happen," he continued. "This isn't possible."
This isn't supposed to happen. This isn't possible. Everybody's always smiling.
I said, "Now." We moved past the vice principal's office and the principal's office, and past the admin office to the doors used by the faculty. I pushed on one of the doors, my hope disappearing as it, too, only opened partially before it was stopped by exterior chains. "The principal's office," I said. "Maybe the window's open, or we can break one." Tom nodded, following along, ringing.
Try and go into a classroom and try and break a window, unless they're too small. Because sometimes they're just really small windows.
As soon as we got into the office, I could tell that the windows weren't designed to open. I started looking around for something heavy I could use to break one of the windows. I located a heavy teaching award on the desk and picked it up. It was the shape of an apple attached to a wooden base. It weighed maybe 10 pounds. I glanced down at the desk plotter, noticing that it was a calendar. I looked at yesterday's date, reading a note there. Faculty meeting, 5:30 p.m. Something fell together in my mind. I was about to tell Tom about it when he spoke. "Someone's coming," he said in a harsh whisper. We ducked behind the principal's desk as a figure moved through the hall outside the office. I heard the door to the office open, and I clutched the award in my sweaty hands, mentally preparing myself to use it.
Whoops, I
Nate
dropped
Altman?
the award. Whoop.
"Is that you?" I stood up quickly, holding the heavy award over my head. It was Christina Henry, a pretty 20-something art teacher I'd had my junior year. "We need to get out of here," she said, holding up her hands. "I don't know what's happening with the other teachers, but they're killing students." "Yeah, no sh*," I said. Tom stood up, eyeing Christina nervously. She looked normal, and she sounded genuinely scared, but I wasn't about to let her near me. "Were you at the meeting yesterday?" I asked her, taking a shot in the dark. She looked at me with open curiosity. "The meeting? What are you talking about? Why is that important?" "Because I'm guessing that's the last time all the teachers were together in one room," I said. "Whatever happened to them, someone did it on purpose. You walked past the teacher's lounge. You must have seen it." "I was sick yesterday," Christina said, apparently seeing the logic in my thinking. "I missed it. Now, can we please get out of here? Whoever chained up the doors had to be able to get back in here somehow. I have a key to all the exterior doors. We can find the one and get out of here." I glanced at Tom, who looked at me with wide eyes, which he shifted down toward the desk. He was trying to tell me something. "Let me think," I said to Christina, then looked down at the desk. Tom leaned down and put his hand on top of a clipboard on the desk.
I'm gonna give myself straight A's really quickly. There we go, now we can go.
Glanced at it, seeing it was a list of names, teachers' names. At the top of the sheet, it read, faculty attendance. And right next to Tom's index finger was the name Christina Henry. Next to her name, a check mark. I looked back up to see that she had a gun in her hand. I like you guys, she said, dropping the scared tone. I really would have let you go. You're both respectful students. You're not disruptive. I really wish you would have believed me. She raised the gun. I threw the heavy...
It's not a water gun! It's a water gun, not a real gun.
As I did so, she fired the gun, but missed as she dodged out of the way of the teacher's award. Tom dove over the desk and tackled Christina, slamming her against the wall. They both fell in a tangle on the ground. Tom scrambled on top of her. She brought the gun up, but Tom caught her wrist with his left hand.
Tom in clutch!
With his right, he reached out and grabbed the award, then slammed it down on her face once. That was all it took. Seeing what he'd done, he clambered off of her, as if she were hot to the touch. I stepped over to her and felt her pockets for the keys she spoke of. I found them and darted out of the office. "Where are you going?" Tom cried. "We need to stop this," I said over my shoulder. I froze when we got into the hall. I could see through the doors to the faculty area that the hall was filled with teachers. They all had sharp implements in their hands, and they were all coated in blood. They stared at me blankly as they hurried down the hall. I ran toward them, stopping at the teacher's lounge. The doors to the faculty area were about 15 yards to my right. The teachers were 5 yards beyond that. I tried the knob to the teacher's lounge.
All right, let's do some math, kids. How much is that?
Unsurprised to find it locked. Trying to calm my shaking hands, I fiddled with the keys, trying 2 of them before the doors opened to my right. I had time for 3 more out of the dozen on the key ring. To my left, Tom came out of the principal's office. "Oh, man," he said, looking at the dead-eyed teachers bearing down on me. "Run, Nate!" he cried. I slid a key into the knob and turned it, amazed to find that it actually worked. I'd found the key. I stepped into the room and picked up a chair from the wall just as the teachers crowded the doorway behind me. I stood outside the glowing circle on the ground and used the chair to shove the floating vice principal. I had to put all my strength into it, but it worked. As soon as he reached the opposite edge of the circle, he fell to the ground. Immediately, the glowing lights in his face disappeared, leaving only scorched black holes. The foreign words and symbols all over the floor, walls, and ceiling stopped glowing too. Behind me, I heard bodies falling to the floor. I turned around to see that all the teachers crowding the hallway were now sprawled out.
Her arm is back. Look. Most people wouldn't see that. But I pay good attention to detail. So, how'd you grow her arm back? Doctor No Sleep? Oh, fine, you're not gonna tell me? Goodbye.
I knew instinctively that they weren't unconscious. They were dead. They'd been dead all day. At least now, they weren't trying to...
Now her arm is gone again?
...to kill us. Behind us, outside the school, the sound of approaching sirens was like music to my ears. Story 3. Hungry...
Alright. I'm gonna end the stream because it's been